we'll go ahead and get started and allow other people to join in. We'll start with some introductions here. I mean, we're starting. This conversation is going to be all about property management, myth busting, the realities and rewards of rentals. If you're a real estate agent, what kind of rewards and what are the realities can you expect by offering property management as a real estate agent? Adding that extension onto your services, and really glad to be joined here with Matt Phillips. And here we are, Matt. I'll go ahead and allow you to kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Brenly. Um, yeah, guys. So I'm a real estate agent based in Toronto, Ontario. I've been in the business a little over 4 years now. Done quite a few transactions from social media. Instagram, TikTok has been main lead source. I've been humbly thankful to not have to spend anything on ads. So social media has been really one of those big proponents. If anybody's ever seen my videos on TikTok or Instagram, just for generating leads, pulling in new business. But yeah, incorporating property management into some of my services when representing landlords has been another leg of the business that I've added, just to create more of a passive revenue stream. So excited to chat about it.
Awesome. And my name is Brenly McCulloch. I'm head of marketing here at PayProp for North America, and come from a background about 10 plus years in marketing across real estate, property management, and even automotive primarily. And I'm a licensed real estate agent in South Carolina. So we got two awesome perspectives coming at this conversation with. So I'll go ahead and kick us off, kind of share a little bit about why property management, and then we'll kind of go into busting some myths. And we're going to keep this totally casual conversation. So, yeah, really, really excited about it. So, there's two things that I think about when it comes to adding property management. Whether you're adding property management because you're a real estate agent, and you're looking for maybe some other kind of revenue streams, or maybe you're not a real estate agent at all. Maybe you're just looking at going into property management to start with, or maybe you're looking at both sides. Which side should you do? Should you do both? Should you do one? So there's two things that I think about when I'm considering like what are the benefits of property management. If someone were to ask like why should I do property management, and those two things would be one, steady long-term revenue stream. When you go into property management, it's relatively predictable income that you can have by offering that, and that's through monthly management fees, through those lease renewal fees. People are locked into leases, so you can, reasonably expect that monthly management fee to come in for the length of that lease, and then hopefully, renew that lease and keep it going on and on and on. You also have things like different kind of setup fees, application fees, tenant placement fees. There's all kinds of extras that you can layer in beyond just monthly management fees, and that's typically what people think about when they're going into property management. Of okay, the standard fee might be 8 to 12% of the monthly rent, so let's call it 10%. And that doesn't sound like a lot month to month, but when you layer in all the extra fees, when you layer in the fact that that is monthly recurring revenue that you can reasonably expect, it does add up when you look at it from like an annual perspective. And so it's also fairly a recession-proof business. Property management, rentals. No matter what the economic climate is, people will always need some place to live, and it's also inflation-proof relatively, because you're getting a percentage of that monthly rent. If inflation is rising rent rates and things of that nature, so is your monthly management fee. It also grows with it. So it's a relatively recession proof business. It's also inflation proof as well. So your monthly management fee will grow if rents rise and things like that. There's no need to raise your prices or raise your services or worry that people aren't buying homes. So now I don't have anything else to fall back on. Even if it becomes a renter's market, you still have that monthly recurring revenue coming in as kind of like your foundation, to your business as a real estate agent. Um, the second thing that I think about, and I'll let Matt kind of chime in on this one too, because I believe that, you can kind of get that stronger market positioning and brand growth. Um, if you're a real estate agent, to be able to add in property management to your services really just allows you to expand yourself as that go-to person for all things real estate, rentals or sales, everything in between. And there's currently, I believe, here it is, 100,000 Ontario realtors, and only an estimated 33,000 property management businesses. So only about 1 in 3 real estate agents consider property management. I'm curious, Matt, like kind of how has that been for you? Adding property management. What's the feedback you get from people? How has that kind of changed even your sales side of business?
Yeah, honestly, so that point that you mentioned about just staying in contact with clients, I think it's a good way on the trading real estate side to just stay top of mind with your clients. Because, when we do buy transactions, let's say we're representing an investor or, we're representing a landlord who's just leasing out their unit, if you don't have those continuous touch points like a property management business in place, then oftentimes you don't hear from that client for a year, if not multiple years, and you always want to stay top of mind. So if you're not doing your follow-ups, you can kind of get just lost in the noise of day-to-day management when that owner, when that investor, when that landlord is just managing their own property. But for me, when you're doing property management, you are always in contact with that client. So you're always top of mind. Whenever that lease renews or whenever that tenant turns over, they're calling you. Whenever that property is looking to be listed, they're calling you rather than you just kind of hitting those random casual touch points throughout the year. You're always staying top of mind. And in Ontario, when we're talking about so many realtors in one province, and few property managers for those real estate agents, I think it's just a daunting business. People, see that people think that there's a lot of time that gets put into it, and there is, just like any business. When start your own when you start your own entrepreneurship journey, the initial timeline is going to be the absolute busiest, and it's once you get those systems in place that things kind of taper off. But I think that initial dedication is what deters a lot of people away from it.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is kind of like an opposite uh, myth construct as we've been discussing. This whole yeah, a topic here where sometimes I feel like people might think, oh, property management, it's on one or two extremes. Oh, it's too time consuming. But this, you've probably seen a couple of people are like, oh, it's so easy. Like I'm jumping into it. Like this is the easiest thing ever. Monthly
Yeah.
recurring revenue. Um, like
Even
why
for a
do
lot of
it?
the clients, like there's
Oh
in
yeah,
most cases, you never hear from your tenant or you never hear from the landlord. I know back when I was renting, I maybe talked to them, excuse me, once or twice a year, which isn't always the case. I don't want to, make people think that that's an ideal situation.
yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, like once you have those systems in place, once you have a proper back end built, once you have the technology like a CRM, that essentially runs your day-to-day communications. It's really quite self-operable, which is it's nice. But yeah, absolutely. At the beginning part, there is time and dedication, just like for those who are real estate agents in the webinar today. When you're first setting up that CRM, it could take days, right? That's a lot of initial work, but now it kind of runs itself. You have your drip campaigns, you have your auto replies, and same thing with property management.
So true. It really does kind of come down to like those, systems, technology. What are you using? There's always that initial kind of like setup. If you were to add property management in it, what are those systems that you need to get set up? And there's a little bit of work up front, but man, once they're set up, automation takes over, and that's the benefit of it all. So very cool. All right, I've got a poll here for all the attendees. Here it is. Feel free. It should pop up on your screen if you're attending, but you can use the chat too. Feel free to use the chat. That way we can see it in real time. What do you see as the biggest challenge in property management? Whether you're in property management now or you're considering to, add property management, A, B, C, or D. What's the biggest challenge that you all believe you would face in property management? So feel free, you can answer the poll. You put it in the chat if you want to. That way we can kind of see um, we can see everything. See, Raj put A and D, time management, legal, regulatory, compliance. That's a big one. You know, um, that one there is definitely, and I think it'll be one of our myths too that we'll kind of talk about that legal aspect, legal aspect of things. See, trying to read through as I talk. See, Ryan, all issues, different levels, different times. So true. Someone else put option E, all of the above, losing good client because of bad tenant experience. I'm curious, on that one, Matt. Like, have you ever lost a good client because of a bad tenant experience? Like maybe, you're managing someone else's property for them and it was a bad tenant. And then, the guy, maybe they had to get evicted, cost them money. Were you looked at bad for putting that tenant in there, or have you heard stories or anything like that?
No, you know what? It happens in Ontario, especially for those who aren't familiar. It's very, very, very tenant favored here in Ontario. I think similar to like California in the States, very pro tenant laws. So yeah, sometimes there are those situations where tenants don't pay and it costs money to get them evicted. But you know what? I think it really comes down to how you manage that client. I personally haven't had one of those experiences, knock on wood. But I think it's really important that you know how to set the expectations for your client when it comes to tenant screening. Because at the end of the day, a tenant can check out perfectly, check all the boxes on paper, but you never know. You don't know what's going on in their head. And you know what? When I'm representing an investor, let's say buying an investment property, the first thing I say is, are you sure you want to be a landlord in Ontario? Because at the end of the day, it's very tenant favored and it can be extremely profitable. A lot of people have built massive real estate empires off of, burring properties or buying, large apartment buildings and are taking on those risks. So you can do everything you can to mitigate those risks, but there is still a risk. And as long as the client understands that, then, I really don't think that it should reflect badly on you as long as you're showing them that you've done everything you possibly can to possibly screen that tenant with the caveat disclosure of we've done all this. However, there is always that, possibility. Then, it is what it is at the end of the day. And most investors who understand that after you've explained it to them are, they understand the risk that they're taking on and ultimately should be comfortable with proceeding in that sense. But yeah, no, I think it really just comes down to proper communication with your client.
Yeah. It's probably the same for the sales process as well,
Yeah,
proper communication through contract deadlines and due diligence periods and things like that.
exactly.
Um,
And there's always in Ontario,
Communication.
there's always the legal term of buyer beware, where you can do everything you can to
Mm.
properly vet a property before you purchase it. But there's always a buyer beware stipulation where, there could be something that just isn't uncovered that you may find out later. So there's risk with everything. There's no risk-free business. But yeah,
Yeah, so true. No risk-free business. And if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? Like if it
exactly.
was super simple. And that's why people hire professionals to do this once you've
You
got
got
the
it.
systems in place. All right, so let's go into some myths because the first one in this comment section, I see a lot of people put option A, which is time management. And it plays right into our first myth. Myth number one, property management is too time consuming.
Yeah.
Um, Break it down for him, Matt.
Yeah, honestly, we touched on it a little bit before. It can be pretty time consuming up front. I don't think there's any business that you can start yourself that isn't time consuming up front. But you know what? Once those systems are in place, just like I said, when you have that back end built, when you have your CRA up and running, maybe you've gotten to the point where you want to hire VAs. It's really a hands off and on business, but you're instead of building the machine, you're just keeping it running at that point. So yeah, at the beginning, it can be pretty time consuming. I think that's something to expect. I think that's even something to be excited about when you're building out your own systems because they are unique to you. But once you have, streamlined processes, a proper back end built out, it really shouldn't be that bad because, I've even seen individual property managers that manage 30, 40, 50 doors, right? And that, if a single person can do that at the end of the day, once you have those systems in place, and I'm sure you could speak more to how PayProp, helps streamline a lot of those processes, but yeah, getting the back end done, accounting, reconciliation, all the financial back end systems in place definitely helps streamline things.
Yeah, technology really allows like those one person businesses to really take off and be so profitable because you can just surround yourself with forms of technology to kind of automate those things. And when it comes to property management, there's kind of like two areas to the business. There's the front end and the back end. So the front end is going out, finding those landlords to manage, their properties, finding the tenants, the tenant screening process, all of that stuff. Once that tenant has signed the lease, now you're over into the back end side of stuff. And that's where, PayProp is really dominated, as a global company, but also in Canada specifically. And the platform is built for, Canadian laws and regulations and things like that. And so the biggest thing, the need on the back end that PayProp came in to solve was just automating that payment life cycle. What happens when on the first of the month when the tenant needs to pay their rent and they didn't? And now it's like the 10th of the month. Like, are you able to keep track of those, arrears and people who have missed payments or they have late payments? Are you able to add in any kind of late fees? If you're managing it all on a spreadsheet, it could be really, really, difficult to manage payment collection and then the reconciliation process of those tenants paying their rent in and then you taking that money, taking your management fee, paying out to the landlord, and reconciling those payments so that your trust account is always at zero. And so PayPop has really just kind of stepped in to solve that need in the market of saving countless hours on the trust accounting and reconciliation each month. So instead of it taking a few weeks to reconcile, your bookkeeping and accounting or hiring somebody to come in and do that for you, with PayProp, you can do it in a few clicks. And it all happens in the same day that the rent is received. So I'm
Absolutely.
sure it's just a huge, huge time saver. Anything that you can automate
Yeah. And I think the
helps.
accounting process is probably the bulk of your time as well,
Yeah. And then you don't have
if
to
you
become
don't
an
have those.
expert. Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't have to become an expert in accounting, on top of everything else. Especially if
that's it.
you're managing 50, 100 properties, tools like PayProp can really allow that one person business to scale up,
Definitely.
without needing to outsource anything else. So, okay, awesome. Love this one. Here's myth number 2. Property management isn't profitable.
Yeah.
You've heard that before.
I hear it a lot. I don't always understand where this argument comes from because at the end of the day, I mean, if you're doing things yourself, and sure, there's overhead, like if you're paying VAs, if you're, paying for a CRM and everything like that. But I mean, really, the biggest overhead is your time. And obviously, if you're valuing your time at thousands an hour, then yeah, I guess it is pretty expensive. But yeah, overall, like, no, it's time management for that creates profitability in property management. So, just to put numbers into perspective, I think the average national medium rent for one beds right now is about $1,500 a month. But I'm in Toronto, so I'm going to use Toronto numbers to make everything sound great. But in Toronto, let's say any two bed condo on average in the downtown core is about $3,200 a month. And like you were saying before, a lot of property managers charge between, 8 to 12%. So if we're talking about 10% on average, yeah, you're looking at in Toronto, you're probably looking at about
Yeah.
$320 a month. But for an average, two bed nationally, you're looking at 245 dollars a month, which is recurring, right? And that's for one property. That's for one
Yeah.
single family condo, you know. And a lot of people, and I'm sure you could speak more to where you guys are, and everybody listening can speak to the type of properties that they're generally seeing. But even on the outside of Toronto, you get a lot of the duplex, triplex, fourplexes. Even getting into commercial multifamily. For instance, there's a few townhouses on my street here in Toronto that are fourplex towns, right? So to put this into perspective, one property manager managing one of these properties, so one fourplex townhouse. Typically, the basement, you're going to rent roughly between 22 to 2500 on an updated. I'm giving you updated examples, so updated houses. Then for the main floor, you're probably getting between 3 to 3,500. For the upper unit, you might get anywhere between the same, maybe 3 to 32. And then a laneway suite, I've seen laneway suites in the back, rent for anywhere between 3,000 to 6,000 a month. So for one property, one owner, you could be looking at over $1,000 in monthly recurring revenue. And, if you're a real estate agent, you're getting the listing commissions on those sides. You're doing the tenant screening for all those, and yeah, and that's for one property. And then you fold in others. Let's say you have a couple multifamilies, or you have other single family condos. It really just goes to show the amount of monthly recurring revenue that you can be looking at. And especially when you consolidate those rentals into multifamilies, the management process becomes a little bit easier because it's one owner for multiple units. And then for condos, generally you have a condos property manager involved as well, which can be, a little bit alleviating for your work as in on that side. But yeah, for profits, time management is the biggest thing. Like your time is going to be your biggest overhead, which essentially just costs you time, doesn't cost you anything financially. But those back end systems, definitely those will be some overhead, but obviously you could calculate your own profit margins.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just reading this comment too that Ryan put in the chat, talking about it does cost a lot to manage properties, administration, accounting, things like that.
Absolutely.
So he says like it's not yeah, so much a myth, but he says probably more reality for him. And as you said, Ryan, if you can manage it yourself with little overhead, then it can be profitable. And I think that's kind of the theme here is how can you manage um, the uh, the property management, the full life cycle of property management, whether it's the back end side or the front end side, with the least amount of overhead as possible. Like how can you basically uh, how people always say like what's your time worth, and if you can outsource it for less than that, then you should. And I think that's what it I think property management really puts you in a position to analyze the business and really try to keep your margin as high as possible and reduce those costs, employing technology, things of that nature to kind of automate that side. So now you don't have to outsource accounting for those financial month end statements if you're managing a lot of properties. Maybe if you're managing a couple, you can do it yourself, and it's worth it to do yourself. And then maybe after you get to five or more, depending on what your time is worth, it could make sense to employ some kind of technology.
And things
So
change with
yeah,
scalability too. As you scale, you're going to incorporate a lot more help than, when you're only managing a few doors and doing it yourself.
yeah. So so true. There's one question. I guess we can go ahead and just knock it out because keeping it
Mhm.
casual. We have no strict agenda. Someone asked, what's the risk of condo versus freehold? Which is better between I guess maybe he's asking I don't know, maybe you understand it more if he's in Ontario.
From a property management perspective, I mean, there isn't a huge difference. The only, benefits are with condos, obviously there's a condo management company. So a lot of those systems, HVAC, cooling, or HVAC and plumbing, electrical, for the most part, has to do with the condo. Obviously, if there's anything unit specific, then that's an owner's responsibility. Um, but tenants obviously have to abide by condo rules and regulations. So generally, and you get different tenant pools. So there's variability there between condos and freehold on that side. From an investment perspective in Toronto, you just are not going to cash flow with condos. So most people manage their condo investments themselves, just because you're probably for a new condo in Toronto, you're probably looking at a negative carry of between 1,000 to 2,000 a month. But for those who have owned condos for a long time, they bought them years ago, rents have gone up, and you're managing those ones. It's a little more hands off. I would say those are the tenants I hear less from are condo tenants versus freehold.
That's great. And I saw another chat, which was kind of about um, what do you say to the people like to this tune who might say 10% management fee, like that's unrealistic or that's hard to achieve. Maybe I might say, I'm more average in that 5 to 8% range. Um, like how do you stand on that? Like what surely it's a thing about the service and what you can layer in. I mean, how do you kind of put that together if you're pitching property management services and you say I'm at 10%, like I really want less. How do you kind of show them that value that you bring to deserve more than the person who's just trying to cut costs and go cheapest route?
Yeah, you know what? I think it just comes down to I always ask the question, how involved do you want to be? Do you want me to just text you when, a repair is needed and I need to bill you for, a plumber? Or do you want to be communicating with the tenant occasionally? Do you want to be aware of everything that's going on, more hands-on? It really just comes down to how much do you want to think about this property versus how much do you not want to think about this property? And obviously, for the real estate agents, if you're charging a list commission, maybe you could cut down on your monthly management fee a little bit, right? Because you're getting that half month's rent. I don't know what it is in every different state, but in Ontario, the listing agent charges 1 month's rent plus HST. It gets split 50-50 between tenant and listing agent. So if you're charging those fees, are you taking that off of your monthly management fee? Or, are you waiving that list commission completely, but you are upping the management fee monthly, right? Are you charging renewal fees every time that tenant passes their year mark and they're staying in that unit? Are you charging the landlord again for that? A lot of people don't, which just gets added into their monthly management fee. So everybody's business is different. And obviously it's going to vary pretty heavily from city to city. Even just an hour outside of Toronto, management fees are very different from what I see in Toronto. Are you incorporating corporate short-term rentals or Airbnb management, which, I've seen those go up to 20%, where you're incorporating housekeeping, lawn and snow removal, everything. It all depends on what you incorporate into the business. So everybody's going to be a little different.
Such a great way to frame it. It's all about. I mean, I feel like as a real estate agent, you become an expert at objection handling. I think that was like a perfect one. How involved do you want to be with the property? Really kind of, you know, puts it black and white for them, and sets the expectation of you can go with this other person, but now
And
you
it's the
need to
same thing
communicate with
when
the tenant.
you like as a listing agent, there's 1% agents out there.
Yeah,
Am I going to charge 1%? No. If you want to go for a 1% listing, go for a 1% listing. I know the services that I offer and I know what they're worth. So, it's the client's choice at the end of the day. All you can do is try to, explain to them why your services are worth X amount. And if they agree with it, great. If not, on to the next one.
yeah. As in the comment sections, those that sometimes you get what you pay for,
That's
which is
very true.
100%. All right, let's go into myth three here. Only large firms can manage properties effectively. Um, hmm,
I would say a large firm had to start somewhere.
yeah,
I don't know too many property management firms that, open up their corporation and immediately have 100 doors under their belt. But yeah, but like, I've seen people manage 10, 20 doors on an Excel sheet. So, I don't think that it's realistic to say only large firms can manage properties effectively. I think as long as you have, the knowledge, you have the systems in place that we were talking about, that, your time isn't spread too thin amongst, all the different properties that you manage so that you can't give your full attention to everybody, then you'll be okay. So it's really not the case, everybody has to start somewhere. You're going to start with one door, you're going to move to five, you're going to move to 10. It just becomes clockwork at that point. And once you scale, you are one of those large firms that are managing properties very effectively.
Yeah. It's so true. Like everyone starts somewhere, and sometimes, like I said, it's easier to manage less properties um, than more properties. They say like more money, more problems. More tenants, more problems.
Yeah,
So sometimes there might be that sweet spot in between. Maybe as a property manager, you only want to grow just to enough to where you can handle it. Maybe yourself, an assistant, maybe
yeah,
like a maintenance coordinator or something, and that's
yeah,
it. That's all you want.
exactly.
And it's really
Maybe I
about
just want
analyzing.
that $1,000 a month recurring. So all I need is one of those fourplexes
Yeah,
downtown Toronto. That's it. I have one client. I have four tenants to manage with that one client
at one location.
at one
Like,
location. That's
yeah,
it.
keeps it simple. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer to it. And because it's scalable, it's not like, oh, I can make, um, you would make more money managing more properties, but all at the same kind of percentage. So it's just, you're just layering in more. It's not like I'm more profitable to manage more properties. You might be
Yeah,
more profitable to manage less properties. Um, one of my
exactly.
favorite one of my favorite stats through all of the property managers and businesses that use PayProp is that PayProp clients grow an average of 20% in their first year. So someone coming in, implementing PayProp into their business to manage the full payment life cycle of their all their tenancies, 20% in the first year. I think that's usually because where you start out, and I remember us talking about this a couple of weeks ago. Maybe you could share more about it. When you start out, most people probably just go with the Excel spreadsheet or something like that. When you implement that software, when you implement the tool that kind of automates all of that, it really does allow you to grow exponentially and grow that profit margin because now you're more hands off.
Exactly.
Kind of
And like
tell
we
me
were
more
saying,
about your perspective there.
accounting is probably one of the biggest time consuming portions of property management. So yeah, like you said, streamlining that saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
I just see a comment here being talking about traffic and driving takes a lot of time in Toronto. Yes, absolutely. I agree. I was gonna say because I work a lot in Toronto and in Hamilton. For those who don't know, Hamilton, it's about an hour outside of Toronto. So, driving, if I'm having a property there, then yes, it does take a lot of time to drive. And you know what? I'm seeing a lot more investors from Toronto go outside of the city because that's where you see higher cap rates. You're looking at more profitability. And that's kind of one of the ways that I've incorporated, it into my business and excuse me, kind of part of the pitch. Because a lot of Toronto investors, it's not, always investors who own 15, 20 units. It's the mom and pop landlords who, just want to get a small duplex outside of the city while they, live in their primary downtown and they still work their full-time jobs. And, when I'm pitching those services, a lot of the times what I found works for me is ask them to manage it, say, hey, you guys, if you want to do this, try managing it yourself for the first couple of months. I would encourage you to do so because if you can, why pay a property manager, right? But I think people quickly see, like you were saying, that driving time distance when you're getting that phone call at 10 o'clock at night that say, hey, my dishwasher flooded. It's kind of quick that people are like, maybe I'm gonna hire somebody to help me out with this. But yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the times that the driving is a big consideration for investors owning units because oftentimes people own units outside of their city because you might see more profitability there. So yeah, that's good point in the comments.
Yeah. Huge point. All about just understanding what your time is worth and if it's worth the time that you're spending, um, and pitching that to whether as you're pitching property management services and whatnot, just really having a good understanding of um, what are the trade-offs of it all.
Yeah. And another point on that, when you're managing properties outside of where you live, like I said at the beginning, initially it's a lot of time for yourself, right? It is time consuming when you're building out those systems, but as you scale, you're going to develop partnerships in the surrounding areas of the properties which you manage. So you're going to have, trades teams for me in Hamilton or in Barrie or in Muskoka or wherever it is, to handle those situations so that you're not always the one, needing to be there in person. But at first, you are that person. You are the one that's going to handle those situations. But over time, once you build out your property management team, whether it's VAs, trades, whoever it is, streamlines a little more, saves you a bit more time.
Yeah, it's all about say like you'll start working in your business with the goal to start working on your business to remove yourself out and then just be able to work on hiring a team, implementing tools and technologies, streamlining processes, things like that to kind of increase that margin. It's a great point. Let's hit myth number 4 here. Here we are. Property management is just about maintenance. This tees up just well what we are just talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Maintenance is a big part. Once you place a tenant in that, initial bulk role when you're vetting a tenant, you're going through their credit report, calling the references and everything of that tenant's placed, maintenance is a big part. And again, it depends what you want to incorporate in your business. Are you incorporating, lawn and snow removal, which could be an added cost for you or an added revenue stream for you? Or are you incorporating, just general landscaping and maintenance, responding to all the tenant inquiries, if any? Like we said, sometimes you have those tenants that you never hear from, but there is a lot, like you can see here, the legal compliance, accounting on the back end. There's a lot that you need to know. And again, at first, when you are a one man or woman show, that is taking up a lot of time at first. But once you again build out those systems, it really becomes a lot easier. But when people say it's just about maintenance, just about answering tenant questions, that's not the case. There's a lot that you need to know. And a lot of the systems that you have, or a lot of different CRMs or technologies that you incorporate can really help you out with that. Even like you were saying with Ontario laws, having systems that help remind what to do in certain situations, that definitely alleviates a lot of the stress.
Yeah. It seems like as a property manager, the ones who will succeed the most are the ones who are really maybe systematic in managing things. You're kind of like the hub. You're the center point to the tenant, to the landlord, through financial, doing the accounting and all this stuff. And you can take it as being overwhelmed by all these different points leading to you. Or how do I bring together these things and I can remove myself out? I'm simply just, I'm the middleman, I'm
Yeah.
just simply putting everyone together. I'm putting the tenant with the house. I'm bringing, this software to manage payments. I'm bringing this for legal compliance and different things like that. I've got these this home repair company here, and I just give them a call and they handle it. They send me an invoice, uh, you know, things like that, and that's
Yeah.
a piece there with PayProp software managing the entire back end. Even when it comes to maintenance, if it's we say, oh, it's all about maintenance. How do I manage that? Not only with the financial side of things, there's a maintenance ticketing system. So those maintenance requests can come in and invoices can be uploaded into PayProp. So when that next rent comes around, that contractor or that plumber, that electrician, whatever, their invoice is paid out of the rent. You get your management fee, and the rest is swept over to the landlord. And that just kind
Yeah.
of streamlines the whole process. Like, how do you just
Agreed. I think
remove
Ryan
yourself?
Ryan hit the nail on the head there. You know, as a property manager, it doesn't mean that you are managing in person, physically, every
Yeah.
aspect of, the communication or, repairs for a property. You are managing your team, and your team doesn't necessarily work for you. They're not necessarily team members of Matt Phillips Realty, but, I have, plumbers or HVAC technicians, or like Ryan said, lawn and snow care removal, or lawn care and snow removal contractors in those local areas. They're part of the team, that they're always the person you go to, that you call. So you're essentially streamlining your delegation processes when it comes to when property management. And that is what, like you were saying, exactly, facilitator Ryan said. So you get, really good at delegating. And that's what somebody pays you for, because, you're managing not only the tenant, but you're managing all your trades. You're managing all your contractors, your accountant, your lawyer, whoever it is, right? So you are a really, really good facilitator, like you said, Ryan. That's a good one.
Yeah. It's just like, back to the, point of pitching your services to acquire more properties. This is another value proposition that you bring. I've got, a book. I've got a team. Like I said, I like the way you phrase it. Like I've got a team, which includes contractors and all these other people. They're part of my team. They're an extension of me, in my business. And one call and they're out there and they fix that problem. I've got really good preferred rates through them, and this and the other keeps the cost down, and
Exactly.
that is what makes you valuable as a facilitator, a property facilitator. That's what we should call it. So
Facilitation. That's it.
all right. Let me see here. That's that myth. And let's chat briefly on getting started in property management. Um, I'm a real estate agent. I want to add property management. I don't even know where to start. How do I even get that first unit to manage? I mean, maybe share your story or what you recommend people do, if they just want to get going.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Everybody's going to be different in terms of like the legal entities that you set up. So I won't get too deep into setting up an LLC in the States, or a corporation here in Canada, versus sole proprietorship, because that's going to depend, or it's going to vary drastically based on each individual person, and what makes the most sense. From a tax perspective as well. But, for me, I have my personal real estate corporation holding company that owns the shares to my prec, beneficiary of the holding company. And under the holding company, you can incorporate, different corporations that whether it's property management, or, whether you're an investor yourself and you want to own properties under your corp, which is not financial advice. So don't take it as that. But
Disclaimer.
yeah. But, yeah, no, for in terms of, generating leads as a real estate agent, your database, right? How many landlords do you represent? How many tenants do you represent that, maybe can get you in touch with that landlord, especially in Toronto, when a lot of these, a lot of us are able to do, because we're downtown, there's obviously, hundreds, thousands of units. How many leases do we do a month? A lot of people are looking at 8 to 10 leases a month, and, being able to reach out to those landlords, "Hey, let's, incorporate property management," reaching out to your past landlords that you represented. How's everything going with the tenant? How are you finding everything with managing the unit? You know, are you in an Airbnb friendly building, or, are you in an Airbnb friendly township? Would you like to give that a shot for a bit, that I can help out with? It doesn't only have to be, 12-month rentals, but reaching out to anybody and everybody, just like as a real estate agent, when you're starting your business and you're looking for those buyers, sellers, landlords, tenants, you're reaching out to everybody in your immediate network and database, looking to get anybody who's willing to try out your services. And I think that is the most important step for what you're looking at. And then, I mean, on a separate note, for real estate agents, like, a lot of us are commission-based incomes, right? So I think it's important to incorporate some sort of monthly recurring revenue, because I don't think all of us should want to trade real estate forever and always, looking for that next paycheck. So, I think just as you run your own real estate business, trading real estate, I think it's very, very similar in terms of lead generation for property management.
Yeah. That's such a great point. Um, and we're gonna do a Q&A here in a minute. So if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. That way we'll have them. We can answer through them. Um, one point on kind of getting started in property management, when you think about all the different angles. You mentioned lead generation, and you're able to, you know, do a lot of that through like social media and different things like that. Um, got the accounting side of stuff, got legal compliance. I know that was another one that people kind of mentioned. What do you um, say to people, or how important is it to like have it all figured out in the beginning? Like, what's your kind of opinion there, in terms of like, oh, I need to understand all of the N1 and the N4 forms, N2 forms, and if you're in Ontario, and all these different things. How important is it to like know it all up front versus getting started and then you kind of learn as you go?
Yeah, I think, you have to do a degree of research, right? You don't want to do a disservice to your client and going in completely blind and making mistakes that ultimately affect them. So I do think you need to do a lot of research. If you're in real estate, you know already a ton from the legal side, and just general processes with tenanting units. So I think if you've been doing that for, a couple of years, then you're already miles ahead of, what somebody would not know initially. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's very, very important that you know what you're doing before you start. But again, like you could do all the research in the world, but until you're thrown into it, you don't know how people are going to behave, what people are going to ask. So a lot of that stuff you learn as you go. But I would say anything that's going to materially affect your client or yourself, you should definitely know before you go in.
Should understand, yeah. I mean, I like what here in the chat, education is important and kind of brushing up on everything. And as Ryan mentioned, like joining professional organizations, there's a lot in the US. I know there's a lot in Canada as well. So that way you can get access to the knowledge of the legal side of things, which could be
Yeah.
intimidating, just the basics. What are the forms that I need to know?
Yeah.
Uh, and
Social media too. Honestly,
yeah,
I know it sounds, like it doesn't sound as concrete when you're doing social media research, but I built my career on social media. TikTok and Instagram has generated me millions and millions in leads, which has been absolutely incredible. LinkedIn as well, for different, sometimes different client bases. But even when I'm looking for referral partners, outside of Canada, when we have people moving to Miami, London, sometimes Hong Kong, LA, the first thing I do looking for referral partners and everything is social media, right? And I think that helps on the lead generation aspect because, when somebody can see how you articulate your thoughts, or for me, I do a lot of education based videos. So when somebody can see me explaining different concepts in real estate, it's kind of like they've already met you and they already know who you are. So a lot of the times when I meet a client in person for the first time, 90% of the time it's because they found me on TikTok or Instagram. Um, you don't have that like weird awkwardness at the
mm,
beginning of trying to get to know you. They're very, just kind of like, I'm just verifying that you are the person that I think you are on social media. And as long as you're authentic there, it's very easy to get those clients. Especially, with listing presentations, if a seller is interviewing, multiple people, or if a property manager is considering multiple people, you already kind of have a leg up because they know who you are. They know the knowledge that you've shared on social media, which gives you a different level of professionalism, I guess, against some of the other candidates, versus them having to go and be like, okay, let me interview these people and figure out who they are, versus for you, let me interview this person and just verify something that I already know.
yeah. That's huge. I never even thought about that too. Just having those. videos out there, allows people to kind of get a taste of who you are. And then
Yeah.
it's more of just a verification process in person rather than a whole introduction process of,
Yeah.
hey, Matt, I've never seen you before other than your headshot
Yeah.
in your email signature.
I love it. People call you and be like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah.
Yeah, how you would call a friend. I'm like, "Hey."
Right, right. You've
They're like,
broken
"Oh,
down
I
all
saw you
those
on."
barriers and walls.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I saw you on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. Even in Toronto, I mean, Toronto's a city of 3 million people, but sometimes you run into people on the street and they're like, "Hey, I actually want to reach out to you." Blah blah. Blah, you know, so
Yeah.
it definitely helps. But I again, social media doesn't is not for everybody. But I think that is for you. Very very good vertical there for lead generation.
Yeah. It's huge. All right. So if anyone, if you're watching this, if you want to get started in property management, it sounds like, one, go to social media, you consume content from there's like probably millions of videos out there on, running a property management business, consume content there through professional organizations, get connected, or even through your own network as well. Get
Yeah,
connected with maybe someone in property management, kind of like a mentorship, in a sense, and kind of get the ins and outs
exactly.
of the business.
And
Um,
just to Ryan's point there, yeah, you know what? I that was a big concern at first, like on social media, what type of leads are you getting? Is it, primarily younger people, which is the case, but remember every young person has mother, father, grandfather, uncle, aunt, friend, who they've shared videos with. So it's not only like your first time or first time home buyer or anything like that, or your very small investor who's only owned one unit. I've got through social media, big commercial clients that are buying upwards of $10 million to you know investors who own 3 or 4 doors that are looking at that. Or I've had somebody reach out and be like, my kid sent me your video, I just wanted
mhm.
to give you a call, right? So
Wow.
I wouldn't shy away from it. I would give it a shot. But yeah, absolutely, I think you need to diversify as well, to your point, LinkedIn, all those other avenues, paid ads as well, flyers, whatever it is. And then like you were saying, or like I was saying before, from a referral network, when I'm looking for other agents to refer to or other property managers, I'm always going on TikTok because I want to see what their personality is like. I want to see what they know. Property manager in um, Miami, Florida. Who am I gonna see that I click well with, and then we're gonna
Yeah.
reach out. Yeah,
That's huge. I think that's the case in most businesses. When I started my career in automotive and managing marketing for an automotive group, um, my biggest priority for the group was that every salesperson needed a picture on the website and ideally some kind of video introduction on the website. Because I know for me, if I were to go like buy a car or something, um, I'd hate to just show up and then just be swarmed with like different salespeople. I'm like, I have no idea if you
yeah,
even know what you're talking
yeah,
about these models that I'm looking at. So having that online so people can kind of see who you are, maybe hear your competence, speak well to what it is that you're, providing services for, uh, probably goes a long way
yeah.
in the industry, really.
And you have to have the authenticity, right? Because if
Yeah,
you meet them in person and you're a different person, then it's the opposite of
opposite
what they
effect.
expect
Yeah.
and works against you. So, yeah.
That's so true. All right, we can take if anyone has any questions. I know we kind of just answered them as we went through because I didn't want to miss anything. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat right now. Otherwise we'll just go ahead and close it close it up. I'll ask a question for you, Matt. Um, as we wait and see if anyone else has anything to say. What is one piece of advice you'd give yourself when you started, maybe just started real estate in general, real estate property management? Like, what's one thing that you would go back and tell yourself when you got started?
Yeah, I would probably say, take it slow, have expectations, but, don't, um, have too high of expectations because
Yeah.
like real estate is hard, right? It's a
Yeah.
there's a lot of competition, in real estate. Like you're saying, 100,000 realtors in Ontario. In Toronto, there's one realtor for every 59 people. I think it's
Huh.
something like 50% of agents don't do any business, and it's similar,
Yeah.
to property managers, right? There's options out there, and there's one property manager for every three realtors, and there's a lot of property managers that aren't realtors, right? So there you have to like navigating your way in terms of lead generation and getting that business off the ground is going to take time, so don't try to rush things. And like you were saying before, you need to have knowledge on what you're offering. You don't just want to go in blind and again provide a disservice to your clients. But I think it's important to just get out there and try everything, see what sticks, focus on those is what I would say.
Yeah. That's great advice. Yeah, try it out. I mean, you don't know. You may hate property management,
Yeah,
and build up all these systems before you even get started.
yeah,
Um, and then you get into it and like, this is just not for me. So kind of do your due diligence, do some research, and jump in and kind of take it slow. I'm sure sets you up for success
yeah.
better in the long run.
You got it. Yeah.
Um, Okay, cool. All right. So if anyone wants to connect with Matt, um, this is information here. And Matt, any closing thoughts? Yeah, I know real estate agents always looking for referral partners, so people can reach out to you
Yeah, I
there.
was
But
gonna say,
anything else to close with?
I think I'm assuming there are people here from, around Canada and the States.
Yeah,
Yeah, reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to get some referral partners. Again, I'm always looking on social media for referral partners in different states, different provinces as well, because I can only trade in Ontario, unless it's pre-construction. But yeah, always looking for referral partners. And if anybody needs a referral partner in Toronto or Hamilton, I'm happy to help.
awesome, perfect. And if anyone wants to connected with me. I'm on LinkedIn primarily, and email address here. If you want to learn more about PayProp and everything we talked about, kind of automating the full payment life cycle of things. Something really cool PayProp added just last week. PayProp's had N1 and N4 forms, and we just added the N2 forms into the platform. So really kind of helps automate and manage all of that kind of legal compliance there in relation to tenant payments and things like that. So if you want to learn more about that, you can head over to payprop.com and or just send me an email. Happy to jump on a call with anyone. So perfect. All right, Matt. Thanks. This was awesome. Just a cool, casual conversation. Hope everyone else enjoyed it. And hope everyone has a great weekend. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
All right. See you, everyone.